Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron's right here, everyone. I'm joined today by Marilyn Honig. How's it going, Marilyn?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good. You've been a part of the SPTV community for so long now, and you and I have never done a chat on my channel.
I know.
Is crazy. And, you know, not only are you a part of the SPTV community, but you have, honestly, one of the most heartbreaking, crazy stories of being raised in a cult, being involved in a cult later in life. And I just think it's a perfect subject for us to chat about. And honestly, for on my end, for a couple of reasons that I want to mention just briefly. And actually, before I get too far into it, let me show everyone Marilyn's channel is Marilyn Honig, Coffee, Cults, and Crafts. And you can find her over there. And you do a ton of content. You do live streams regularly, right?
Yes, pretty much most days. Because this guy named Ron said to grow your channel, you should go live every day. And I got the Ron mic. So how am I sounding, guys? Okay.
Yeah, your sound is spectacular.
I hope that the Shure MV7 guys give you some kind of, kickback.
You'd think so. Do you have the USB connect? I've got the cheaper USB connector. Do you have like the there's another word for it.
With the interface and all, whatever that. No,
DSR,
no.
DSLR. I don't know.
No, just plug it right in. I'm very retro. I still have Facebook. I don't have any of that Instagram, whatever. I'm still Facebook.
So I'll tell you what, the two reasons that I was mentioning, and I hope I can remember the second, because right now I can only remember the first. I've mentioned on my channel when I talk about some of my path out of Scientology that even when I no longer believed any part of Scientology, I thought it was BS. I thought L. Ron Hubbard was a con man and all this stuff. It didn't occur to me how much I was still holding on to the fact that Scientology was at least a special form of BS. And I read Steve Hassan's book, Combating Cult Mind Control. And he tells his story of being recruited into the Moonies as a college age young man and rising up through the Moonies and how he left. And I was surprisingly to me, utterly devastated to realize while reading Steve's story that Scientology wasn't even special BS. It was garden variety BS.
Same here. Yeah.
And that so many of these high control groups just have the exact same playbook, the exact same way of treating its members, of recruiting people, of controlling people. And it was devastating for me. And it was, I didn't realize how much I was holding on to that. And, when I watch documentaries about like Nexium, for example, I'm just absolutely struck by yet again how similar these cults are to each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like to a certain degree, I'm afraid to keep looking. I'm afraid to keep finding out that they're all the same. And so I'm really, really interested to hear and afraid at the same time to hear about your experience. And the second reason is actually a lot of people ask, or maybe it's just me that wonders, like, what is it that really resonates about stories of former Scientologists with, the world at large who's never had anything to do with Scientology? And
Right.
So often the answer to that question is, people who've had experiences just with abusive relationships seem to really resonate with stories of people who come out of high control groups because there's so many similarities in the experiences.
Absolutely.
And I think since you yourself never personally had any involvement in Scientology, and yet you've become a very integral part of the SPTV family, I think hearing your story would also help people understand what is it about people's experiences who've never had anything to do with Scientology that allows the story of former Scientologists to resonate with them. So maybe we can start out with me asking you that question.
Okay.
What was it about stories you heard from former Scientologists that sort of made you go, uh-oh, or this is something that really resonates with me?
Yeah. Well, first of all, your first point about Scientology not being all that special, that's exactly what I went through because, when you're in a high control, especially, the classic cult with, all checking off all the boxes in Stephen Hassan's book about, charismatic leader and all of the indoctrination, you are told from a young age that this is the truth, right? So thousands of cults out there, small ones like mine, Door of Hope, with 50 people max, all had the truth, right? So when you find out that everybody has the truth, realize probably nobody does, right? And so that was really like, oh my God, like all these cults think they have a truth. We'll talk later how I escaped the cult. I didn't even really know that I was in a cult. I mean, it's ridiculous when you hear the stuff I went through. It's very much like a Sea Org type situation. I didn't even know. I didn't have the vocabulary, the understanding, and the words. So when I started watching, and I'm trying not to get emotional here, but I will. I know I will. I got tissues. When I started watching Leah Remini in the aftermath with all y'all, right? All you OGs, as we call you, I was just absolutely blown away. Week after week, I would cry through every single episode, and so many things I could relate to. And this was 2017 through the 2019, I think. I really started to deconstruct and unravel. And I had been out of the cult for 10 years, and I still didn't realize it was a cult. And I just remember, I don't remember the exact episode, but I was like, holy, I won't swear this early. Holy crap. I was in a cult. Oh my God, that's what it was. It was a cult, and it checked off all the boxes. And it really helped me to start to really understand what happened to me and understand that I wasn't alone, and particularly you, Aaron, losing a sibling. I could, relate to that as well, because I was the youngest of 7 children, and there's only one sibling left with us, and unfortunately I don't get to see him. So I could really relate to that too. And I didn't lose my family because of a cult, but because of some really awful shit. When I don't know if you wanted me to go into that, but that's the answer to your question.
Yeah. Well, I don't want you to go into anything you don't feel like you're comfortable going into, so I'm not going to necessarily prompt you.
I talked to my friend, the late Doug Kramer, about it, and he did a very lengthy but very thorough. You made me feel very comfortable, so it is out there. I'm willing to tell you. I'm to the point where I can talk about it. I wasn't able to for many, many years, even utter Door of Hope or that I was in a cult. I mean, I love this community because you can talk about it. You can talk about anything. I do on my channel. Talk about anything and everything, but kind of like Reese, but only a little more about about other cults too. But I couldn't even utter my my former cult leader's name. Her name was Marlene Sweeney, and now I love to say her name any chance I get, because she deserves it. She earned it, just like David Miscavige. So Marlene Sweeney and Kelly made a little kind of a drinking vibing game that Doug and I used to do. And so every time we say Marlene Sweeney or Xenu Marlene, we imbibe. And she would hate that. She would hate that. And she would hate what I crochet now too.
Oh, she would?
Oh my God, yes, because okay, so in the Pentecostal religion, I guess we'll get a little bit into that, and I can tell more, of my younger story.
But real quick, if somebody wanted to hear your interview with Doug Kramer, if they just searched your name, Marilyn Honig, and Doug Kramer, or Marilyn Honig and Dazed But Not Confused, they would find your.
Yeah, and it's also it's on Doug's channel and it's on my channel. If you you can find it pretty easy on my. Yeah, he had me simul stream to my channel. Go to Doug's too, and please, watch as many videos as you can, because they're great. But on my channel, I have a playlist. So if you go to my channel, hit playlist, it says my story, and it's the 2-part interview I did with Doug. So
okay, good. So quick reminder, everyone, if you're just joining us, Marilyn's channel is Marilyn Honig, Coffee, Cults, and Crafts. And anything we don't discuss here, you can definitely find in the other videos too.
Oh yeah, we talk a lot on there. Yes. So,
Okay, so the
well,
crocheting.
crocheting. Oh my God. Okay. So, some of you might know me as the Xenu crochet lady. I don't have a Xenu today. I just sent a full. I've been making full dolls, not just the bobblehead covers, but the full dolls. But I started. This was inspired by our friend Laura FM. You know how she always wears goldenrod, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's big. I gotta position it a little bit better. Okay. So yeah, I used to. So in fundamental charismatic Pentecostal circles, you have what's called an anointing or a calling, and my calling was to just be what they call a helpmeet. And I would just sit in the corner and crochet, and I would like swab the decks, kind of like in the Sea Org. I had buckets and buckets of ammonia water, and I would just wash like walls and floors and windows. We didn't have newspaper, but I did all that. So I would sit in the corner and crochet, and it really did help me stay semi-sane, because everybody was literally losing their mind around me because of the horrible indoctrination. And so now, instead of crocheting blankets and helpmeet type stuffs like dishcloths and pot holders and sweaters, I crochet funny shit. And it's really fun to do stuff with Scientology, because nobody knows what Door of Hope is. So I want to introduce you to somebody. This is his name's Rodney. He's a goldenrod. He's a goldenrod, and there's more. And this is serious business. His feet say SPTV. I'm kind of attached to him. Is he sweet?
Oh my God. It's so big.
What's a pillow? It's a pillow. You can cuddle with him. Aaron, seriously though, you can bring him on the plane. You can rest your head on his balls. On his feet. But just be careful, because if you go like that, he might hit somebody, and it does kind of hurt. Honestly, it kind of hurts. So, anyways, I'll put this thing away. But he is happy to see everybody. Just
wow.
so I'm gonna put that away. Sorry. So yeah. So Marlon Winnie would be horrified to know that I do that now.
The comments in the live chat right now are
I'm not even looking. I'm just pretending I'm in my living room, or I'm in my little spot talking to Aaron.
Oh my God.
Are you okay?
I think I'm okay. That's amazing.
Okay, so that happened.
Oh. Oh, that's amazing. So the cult leader would be a little annoyed at that.
Yes, just a little.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's, for right now, skip the early life, because I don't know that either you or I are prepared
Can
to
handle it
for that right now.
Yeah.
The Door of Hope cult. Oh, I wanted to say this. When you say that, like, it was years and years and years later, and it wasn't until you're like watching the aftermath that you're like, oh my God, I was in a cult. It's funny. I know there's going to be people watching who like, how can you be in a cult and not know you're in a cult? And I just want to say, there's not a Scientologist walking the earth, all 16 of them, who think they're in a cult. Like, no Scientologist. They think it's the furthest thing from a cult you could possibly be.
Yeah.
And nobody joins a cult. Nobody thinks they're joining a cult, and no one who's in one thinks they're in one. And even Scientologists, or especially Scientologists, at some point, and it's usually never when they're still in Scientology, come to the realization that like, oh, no, our group was one of those. And you're like, yeah, your group especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did you, what led you, what circumstances contributed to you joining this group of only 50 people? It's remarkable.
Yeah, and there's thousands, and I live in Vermont. There's tons of them. I live in the southern half of Vermont, right near Massachusetts. But you skip over the quote cities, which are very small, Rutland and Burlington, the northwest or the northern kingdom, I think they call it, near Canada, cult city too. It's all cult. It's just yeah, they love it.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm
Something in the
surrounded by
water?
cult.
What's the deal?
I think it's because, well, there's a little rhyme in Vermont, do what you want. So, it's just you're in kind of the Green Mountains and
Hmm.
you just do whatever you want. There's Catholic militias, there's tons of yoga cults. I don't know if anyone has seen the Mother God documentary. Holy crap. I covered it with my friend Ash from That's So Fucked Up podcast. And it was just wild. And I was like, wait, they like fled after 17 of them got arrested. It was a small cult too, 30 people, I think. There's thousands of thousands, and that's one reason why I want to get the word out, because Scientology, they got Tom Cruise and all that. I got Marlene Sweeney. She looks like a female version of Keith Raniere, and she's just very school marmy, unassuming, but she had like that real book smart charisma, and
Hmm.
there's thousands of them. And the Pentecostal religion, well, Pentecostal sect, or it's not, I don't want to consider it a cult, but I would consider it very culty. So I was basically groomed as a child. I came out of a horrific background, a lot of trauma, a lot of loss. And, like I said, you can see my story on my channel, but I was adopted by a Pentecostal charismatic family. By charismatic, I mean speaking in tongues, casting out demons. We didn't have snakes because snakes don't like to live in the north. So thank God, because I hate snakes. But yeah, it was all that. It was the fake healings. And yeah, all that. So the worst thing about it to me, the culty thing about it was, as a fire survivor who had suffered second and third degree burns, I was told that if I didn't measure up, I was going to burn forever and ever and ever and ever in hell. And
Mhm.
I always felt like I was going to hell because I could never measure up. I never had, like, I still to this day, it's like I never felt like I had you know moral, traditional, spiritual values. I don't. I just can't do it. I try, but I just can't. So I'm just like, throw it out with the bathwater. It's like I just try to be a good person and love people and help people. And I'm a little rough around the edges. I like, what can I say? So um it was hard being a cult member, but I was basically like, this is what you're doing. And so as far as like being groomed for it, it was always this thing of looming over me. You're going to go to hell if you don't get it right. And it was, a very strict upbringing. And I was a mess when I arrived in the foster home, because I had been in the hospital for many months after losing my mom and three siblings. And no one like wanted me or could deal with, like, I couch hopped for 4 years until I was almost 9. And then finally, and I suffered a lot of abuse, but finally DCF, or we called it DCF back then, took me and put me in a foster home with 9 other children. It was 10 of us. And I was like, kind of like a number. I mean, you just jumped in the van, went to church 3-4 times a week, did what did what you were told. You were seen and not heard. And so when I was a teenager, I was still going to public school, but we were supposed to be in the world, but not of it. Right. So you go to school, but you weren't allowed to go to dances, hang out with friends, watch movies, no music, no
So
rock
even in the
music.
foster home, it sounds like it was a religious foster home.
Absolutely. It was
Oh,
Pentecostal. Yeah. Yeah. And my
Oh.
my adopted mom, I mean, they tried their best. They're good people, but my adopted mom is basically what they say, born on the pew. Like her uncle founded the church, and it was an Assemblies of God. And I'm not knocking mainstream religion. I'm not knocking Christianity as a whole, but these people were what they call holy rollers. And I'd go in and people would be frothing at the mouth, getting demons cast out of them, getting like healings where people you don't know. It's a small town. People come in with a wheelchair and then leave jumping up and down. Like, I don't know these people. Like, Is it staged? I don't know. But all this stuff. And the worst thing was we were indoctrinated into, as a child, even in a quote, mainstream-ish church, that if that Jesus was coming back any day, they stopped saying the date because the date would come and go, kind of like the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? So I remember being 10 or 11 years old watching this series in church on a pew watching this scary movie. It was called A Thief in the Night. And it was about it was 70s. So I was like, don't go back and watch it because it's so bad. And it's scary too as a child watching this, where the rapture came, and that meant when Jesus came back and took his people. I was always going to miss the rapture. I knew it. So whenever I was in like the grocery store with my adopted mom or my adopted siblings, and you lose track of them in the store. Oh God, the rapture came. Oh shit, I missed it. I didn't say shit back then, but I missed it, right? So what would happen if you miss the rapture? I laugh about it now, but it was so scary because you missed the rapture. You're on your own. If you don't take 666, and this is in the Bible, on your hand or your right hand or your forehead, it's all backwards here. If you don't take that, then so if you take it, you can buy and sell and you can live, right? Until the tribulation comes, and you'll end up going to hell because you have the mark of the beast on your right hand or your forehead. Okay, you got that part. But if you don't want to go to hell, which I didn't, because I didn't want to burn. I'd already burned some and it was terrible, right? So you do that, but then you will be I don't know if I can say it.
Go ahead.
Beheaded for the gospel of Christ, because you missed the rapture, but you can still go to heaven if you get beheaded. So I was like, I used to think about it at night, like, okay, try to figure this out, right? So the rapture is probably going to happen. I'm going to get left behind. Do I want to get 666, but then I'll burn to death, or not to that, forever and ever, right? Or do I get my head chopped off and then I still go to heaven? And I try to think as a 10-year-old what that would feel like. I'm like, I hope they put a bag over my head. Like, it was that bad. It was that, yeah.
Oh
Seriously.
God.
This is the shit that kids, and I've talked about this on my channel, and so many people were like, oh my God, I can't believe, I felt that too, but they were like afraid to say it, right? As a kid. So I used to think, oh, what would it feel like? And then you go to heaven and you're supposed to get a new body, but your body's supposed to be risen. So do I show up at the pearly gates with no head? Like, is it under my arm? And then you don't get a mansion because you didn't make the rapture. So you end up.
I take it back. This is much worse than Scientology.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Because they don't have PIs. Well, and this was the mainstream church, Aaron. This is like not mainstream Christianity, but mainstream
Pentecostalism.
Pentecostalism. I don't like Pentecostalism. I'm not calling it a cult, but you guys just decide what you think about Pentecostalism, okay? And this was yeah. You guys know, what was that guy in Growing Pains? He did the next one, Left
Kirk
Behind.
Cameron.
Yeah. He's a clown too. But anyways,
is he a Pentecostalist?
I would call him a holy roller. I don't know.
Or is he evangelical? I don't know the difference, to be honest.
Definitely evangelical. So evangelical is, I would consider all Pentecostals evangelical, but not all evangelicals are Pentecostal.
So Pentecostal's more extreme.
Yes, and evangelical is more of an umbrella,
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I came out of. So when I was a teenager, I got, this was the 80s. I liked Madonna and Prince, and I wanted to listen to rock music. Oh, no. And I really wanted to go to prom. Oh, no way. Right. So the only way I got to listen to rock music when I was about 15, 16 was backwards, because you go to church and they would take like the Eagles' Hotel California and all these albums that I really was fascinated with, but we listened to them backwards because they were supposed to say something about the devil. So like they only let us listen to rock music backwards because it's supposed to scares you straight, right? So it would be like, it goes and they'd be like, listen, that says you love the devil, or the devil is great, or something. And I'm like, I don't hear it. It's just saying zhu, 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 like whatever. So I would get scared, like another panic attack in the middle of the night. So when I was 17, I just decided, you know what? I'm going to go to hell anyways. I might as well have fun doing it. So I ended up running away Ended up in a troubled teen home for a few weeks. Ended up in a pretty good foster home until I graduated from high school. Got to go to prom. I ran away so I could go to prom, pretty much. And then I was out on the street again, and I was couch hopping because I had aged out of the foster system. So I decided to escape, to just take off to Cape Cod and kind of sow my oats, and just spent a couple years on the Cape, just having fun and couch hopping again, and working and between jobs, whatever. And then I was really going to hell, really, because I had way too much fun on Cape Cod. So my parents invited me to come back home at 20 years old. And with
These are the Pentecostal parents, foster
yes,
parents.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and they knew I was struggling. I mean, I had no support system, but it was always like I had backslid and I was an apostate. I don't know if you've ever heard that term. It's like an SP, like you're an apostate, right?
Scientology started using this term because the courts. Anyway, yes, Scientology uses the term former
That's a Christian
disgruntled
term.
apostates. Yes.
Yeah, they steal a lot from the Bible. Like the one what's the Sea Org slogan?
We come
Not
back.
the other one. Many are called, few are
Revenimist?
chosen.
Oh,
Many are
called,
called,
few are chosen.
few are chosen. That's from the Bible. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Just saying. Yeah.
Did I ever, when I got out of the Sea Org or whatever, and I would see bumper stickers that said, "What would Jesus do?" I was like, they stole our slogan. Because in Scientology, the slogan is, "What would Ron do?"
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know which came first. Maybe they stole it from Ron. We got to give the guy something. We got to give him something. I don't know. So, okay. So yes, I went back home, kind of very apprehensive because I knew I was going to end up having to go back to church. But my adopted mom said, "Oh no, we obviously I would have to go to church, but no. We joined a new church, and you remember Marlene Sweeney? She was a Sunday school teacher. She's a Bible teacher. She doesn't do all that crazy, like seeking and touch, which I found out later she did, just more quiet, more evil about it. But she doesn't do all that sensational stuff, slaying the spirit and all that stuff. And we're gonna roll up our sleeves and learn about God. So I was like, okay. And Marlene was a devout follower of this guy named Bill Gothard. He started the IBLP, Institute in Basic Life Principles, and he believed in the umbrella of authority. I don't know if anybody recognizes that name, but it was the cult that the Duggars follow. And so she just basically did a spin-off from the Pentecostal church, and I call Door of Hope a petri dish cult. So it was a little bit of charismatic, fundamental, Pentecostal, IBLP, all mixed together. So basically you have an authoritarian, mystical, like crazy shit church, and they were really into the umbrella of authority, but also this really strange like prophetic thing where only Marlene could hear from God, and I didn't know what God's will was. I was always navel gazing. I was always beating myself over the head and crying out to God. So I was like, I didn't know what was the devil, what was my sin nature, what was God, what was myself, what was this. But Marlene knew what God's will was because she was a student of the Bible and a prophetess. So she, about a year after I went home, I started working and everything, and she started a live-in discipleship ministry and started renting this big old inn like in Vermont. She was from Long Island. She called it Long Island. And everyone's dream, in Long Island is like, let's go start a bed and breakfast in Vermont, right? And they have no idea what they're doing. Like, they don't know. I don't know if you ever saw Baby Boom with as a Diane Keaton. It's hilarious. Like she rented this or she bought this building and had no idea where the water came from or how to fix anything. So lucky for her is that Marlene decided to glean or pluck out different people from different Assemblies of God's churches, and people that were 20 something, 30 something that could do her bidding. And it was basically the hell began when we all moved in.
Wow. Can I ask one question? What is the
Absolutely.
umbrella of what is the umbrella of authority?
Okay. So the umbrella of authority was one of the main teachings that Bill Gothard / the Duggars guru had come up with. Right. He had like this kind of pseudo military thing too, where he'd have like camps, a lot of cults do that. So I kind of like the Sea Org. They'd have these people that really meant business with the religion. Right. And really wanted to make a difference. So the umbrella of authority was basically like, there's God is the ultimate authority, but who knows what God wants? The pastor or the leader, right? So you're under this umbrella and there's a hierarchy. So there's God, the leader, the men, the elders. It was very, very patriarchal, which I'll tell you why Marlene got away with being this way, being a woman. And then the women, the wives, and then the children. And this umbrella of authority was, if you think of it this way, you stay under that covering of umbrella of authority of what your husband, your pastor, ultimately God wants. Or if you go out of the umbrella of authority, it's going to rain on you, or all like terrible things are going to happen to you. And guess what? You're going to pull in a lot of shit. You pulled it in. That's what it is. Yes. So
I want to throw something out there, and guys, I'm not watching the live chat, but please feel free to let me know what your thoughts on this are. Back in the 60s and the 70s, Scientology was not as militant and strict and structured and puritanical as it has become. And I just suspect that people who have been steeped in the type of religious beliefs that you're talking about, and were prone to wanted to believe in something greater than themselves, some greater purpose, some greater meaning, some greater plan, that those people back then, when encountering Scientology, I think it's quite possible that Scientology just filled a need that they had, and actually, and this is what I'm hesitate to say, made a little bit more sense. That's what I want people in the live chat to let me know. Because I know when people hear about Xenu and shit, they're like, ain't nothing about that makes sense. That there was no such thing as Xenu in the 60s.
Right.
L. Ron Hubbard didn't even come up with OT3 until like 1967 or something.
Are you saying it made more sense early on? Or?
Yes, because it was just self-helpy. It wasn't God, heaven, hell, there was none of that, none of your staples of religious belief, but it still appealed to sort of a higher power, even though the higher power was you. Right. You're the higher power. Anyway, I'm just speculating that perhaps in the late 50s, early mid 60s, it's one of the things that helped Scientology grow, is that it appealed to people who wanted something greater, and just might have made a little bit more sense.
Right. I don't know. Wasn't it called like more of a science, like the science of mental health, the technology?
Dianetics, exactly. He's always said it's a technology and it's not something you believe, it's something you do. And Dianetics was a science. Scientology was almost immediately kind of being a more spiritual philosophy. I feel like L. Ron Hubbard used spiritual and religious interchangeably when it was convenient. But I think, my memory, I'm not great with dates. I think he jumped into Scientology in 54. Dianetics, I know, was 50. Right. Scientology, I think, came about more like 54. And he didn't even get into the Xenu stuff until like 67. And even then, almost nobody knew about it because almost nobody gets up to the OT levels. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Right. Yeah.
Because people go, holy shit, what does Scientologists believe? I'm listening to this shit and I'm like, holy shit.
I know, like Xenu, like, oh my God, we have pretty much equivalents for everything, And
I wish.
And if there's any ex-Scientologists, if there's any ex-Scientologists, I was doing this with Doug. I have notes and notes of different comparisons of the language of the crazy, the demon shit. You had body thetans. Can I flash this for my friend Clearwater Cheryl? She sent me this body thetan. Oh my God. And I'm telling you guys, I've crocheted for 42 years and she is the best crocheter. Look how uniform her stitches are. So Clearwater Cheryl, but body thetans, I had them all over me, but they were demons, Just saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you hear Scientology's or L. Ron Hubbard's story of Zeno and the body thetans, do you think he just purely stole that from demonic possession?
I don't know. It's really funny because I don't know as these guys are that smart. Like even Marlene, like they had there's this hidden handbook somewhere, like how to become an evil maniacal cult leader, and they all follow it to the T, only with different language, only with different words. And it's like, how do they effing know this? Right. But I think it's just something in a call it. I mean, I'm no doctor, I'm no psychologist, but narcissistic psychopaths pretty much have the same, tendencies. And I think he was just ramping up the pressure. I don't think he was like, okay, how can I deceive all these thousands of people? I'm going to start by making sense. And but I don't know how it happens, but it does start by making sense. Just like how I got into the cult. I was groomed from 8.5, 9 years old, and I knew, God was the way, right? And it got worse and worse and worse. And all of a sudden, I lost 40 pounds, didn't need to. I mean, back then I didn't need to, but I was skin and bones. I was, constantly just losing my mind. Everybody around me was being hospitalized. We were starving. We were desperate. I was just carrying buckets of ammonia water, just breathing all this crap in, and all for the cause of what? And when it started, not to skip ahead in my thing, but I have this Mama Bear mug. This is what
Mm.
saved my life. And you know what? We left with our kids once Marlene started to not only it was called laying hands on us and casting out demons, not only accusing me of having demons, but my 7-year-old daughter, who is, light of my life. Marlene Sweeney decided that she was a Jezebel and had a demon of Jezebel in her, and proceeded to do 2 exorcisms on her. And honestly, Aaron, it took me 2 more years. It took me, my husband, who many of you that follow my channel have met, my husband, who was a sweetheart, really good person, but we were indoctrinated. It took 2 years to escape. But I tell you, we left with our children. We didn't save our children. Our children saved us,
Wow. Wow. How
because
were
I
you
could
able
take a
to
lot of
leave?
abuse. So honestly, I still live less than 5 miles away. And Marlene's 85 now. She's still waiting for the end times of Jesus to come. Hasn't happened yet. She's dying of cancer, I heard. But the way we were able to leave, it took a while, but we were called before Door of Hope. It has a equivalent of a COMEF. And it was basically like, we've discerned that you are being, you have hidden rebellion in your heart. It wasn't hidden at that point. I was just like, this sucks, But it was the abuses. It wasn't necessarily the beliefs. And I see that with Scientology too. It was because she was just, bearing down hard and mistreating all of us horribly and being a goddamn hypocrite, right? Sorry, I just take the Lord's name in vain, but yeah, she's just being a darn hypocrite. And so she wanted to come and lay hands on me one day in my house. And I told Duncan, don't let her come. And I had a full on panic attack, like literally right in that corner right there. And he said, I won't, I promise, I won't let her come. And he said no for the first time in 16 years. We'd been in for 16 years, and we had done everything she said. We weren't even allowed to hold hands before we got married. And she controlled everything, where we went, what we did, everything. And we were married. My husband's almost 12 years older than me. So he was 38 when we got married. I was 26. We hadn't even held hands hardly. I think we snuck and held hands and kissed once. But yeah, it was like that. I know, I'm bad. I'm really bad. We kissed.
Oh my goodness.
So it was like populate the earth, right? You go from nothing. I don't know if anybody knows what courting is. We barely courted, right? And good thing we had both sold our oats as youth, so we knew where everything went. So we had 3 kids like that, like. And then I had really difficult pregnancies, and I got special permission to stop having children. I think mostly because my daughter, Marlene, had it out for her. And she was 3.5 years old. And when my youngest was born, and she was like, I think she didn't want any more little Marilyns running around because she just did not like my daughter. So she gave me permission not to have. And I know it sounds really crazy. It sounds like you're stupid for doing that. Like I know I look back now and I'm just like, now I just tell her to, what? But I back then it was just years and years and years. I had just been worn down and broken down, and you just go, right? You just kind of don't know what to
So
do.
it's incredible. It really is incredible. So you look back on it now and you realize it was a cult. How would you describe what you thought it was then?
That's a good question. I thought, and this is going to sound really crazy, but I thought that we were like special. Like we were told that we were like the remnant and we had the truth. We had the inner secret, like we were like the OTs, we were like, we're special. And the parishioners, like we were basically there to serve the parishioners, but we were sort of looked up to in a way too, even though we were like, everybody was just turning a blind eye to the abuses that were going on, right? But yeah, we thought that we had the truth, and I didn't feel like I could live without it until it became a point where I would rather die, I'd rather die, and I had to get out, and I knew I was going to hell anyway. So again, just like when I was 16, I ran away. It was like me and my kids, we were told that if we left, and we had that ComEv thing, we had that tribunal sitting there, and people that I loved, people that I had pretty much spent, I had no family or friends outside of them, right? They all looked at the floor and they just let her condemn us. And I was afraid of this back then, but I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I have a really dark sense of humor and I just can't help it. But Marlene told me that my kids and Duncan and I were going to end up on the dung heap, like DUNG, the shit pile. And I was like, I mean, now I'm like, oh no, not the dung heap. But the dung heap meant that you would just be cast away. You'd be burned up. God would condemn you. And so I'm sitting 5 miles away, right, with them going by. And I'm like, when we left, I was so scared of the dung. I don't even know what the dung heap was, but back then I didn't want to go there. Now I am on the dung. Now I'm on the shit pile, and y'all are great. She was like, the people out on the dung heap are the worst people, but she is just such a horrible person that everybody looks great compared to her. So it was,
Wow.
again, like those evil, I don't say the W word, but yeah, those blasted never ends. Yeah.
Oh, the W word. I know what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
The dung heap would be a great name for a channel or a podcast.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the parishioners a moment ago. When you
Yeah.
said there was 50 people in the group, is
Yeah.
that include the parishioners?
Yeah, well, there were, I mean, literally there were hundreds that kind of came and went, but there were 50 regulars. So in the heyday when we were all living there before I got married, there were at one time about 12 of us, like 12 disciples. Like Jesus had 12 disciples. We lived on the second floor. And again, not plug in, my channel, but I'm just saying I do have all of that. And I think on the thumbnail that you put up, Aaron, has the Door of Hope Inn. That was the inn. They called it the Old Coach Inn. It was built in the late 1700s, and it was part of the Underground Railroad. And it was a beautiful building, but it was so much work. And my husband did a lot of the maintenance, and it was like I had to clean top to bottom. So we were basically there to fast and pray, and Dunk calls it navel gazing, like looking within. And that reminds me of a lot of that, like auditing, the repentance. There's so many parallels. And I would love to dig into that with an ex-Scientologist, if anybody's interested that has a channel that wants to talk about that stuff.
It's funny. In some references, L. Ron Hubbard would mockingly refer to religious scholar types as contemplating one's navel. And I never understood what the heck he was talking about. It just seemed like a funny phrase for doing something pointless. Is that actual? What is that? Is that an actual phrase that actually refers to something?
Well,
specific?
they talk about like belly button. It's sort of, it's sort of a slang, like a vernacular, but in New Age, they talk about like navel gazing, like looking within, it's like, yeah, it's like kind of staring at your belly button, like looking inside of you,
But
because if
literally?
they can, um, not really, we didn't have to actually look at our belly button. We had to like lay I want to say the word right because there's a lot of bad ways to say it, prostrate before God, where you're literally on your
A lot of
not
ways to say it
prostrate.
wrong.
Well, yeah. So you would literally lay on your face before God. It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. So you lay on your face and you're just crying out to God about what a terrible person you are. Right. And we had what was called, instead of a reactive mind, we had a sin nature. You were born bad because, people, and I'm not making fun of the Bible or Christianity, guys, but I'm just saying, if you take the Bible literally, right, word for word, which is hard to do because there's a lot of contradictions, but if you believe that the earth is only a few thousand years old, or however many thousand years old, and the reason why babies are born bad, people are born with a sin nature that needs a savior, Jesus Christ, right? That we took it literally, that Adam and Eve were naked in the garden. They took the serpent, which is the devil, Lucifer, that was fallen. He tempted Eve with an apple. It's all the woman's fault. Eve gave Adam the apple. They ate the apple, and then presto, everybody's born a sinner. So you were born a sinner, and so you need a savior. Now, you're okay if you die as a child before the age of accountability. Not sure when that is. I think it's around 8, 9. Then you'll still go to heaven because you don't know any better, right? Even though you were born a sinner. After that, now get this. I was 8.5, 9 years old when I joined the culty church, right? So I was always going to hell because I could never measure up, right? So they believe that they take the Bible totally literally. So that's pretty much screws you, because then you're working for your salvation for the rest of your life. And I know that mainstream Christians believe that Jesus saved you and that's it, but there's all these things that we had to do to earn our salvation. So that's what we were
Wow.
fasting. We were fasting. We were praying. We were studying. We were listening to these indoctrination, hellfire and brimstone all the time. And we would sit at night after working and pretty much starving and doing all this heavy labor to keep you busy, right? We would have to looking again about the looking within, always trying to find a demon inside of you or some bad thing, some bad thought, everything. So it would literally, people went insane. I unfortunately recruited 2 of my friends into the cult, and they both were, well, one of them was hospitalized and the other one still there. He was just a good friend growing up, and he ended up marrying Marlene's niece, and he's still on the board, they called it, the ones that do the tribunals. And he lost his mind. He fasted for 10 straight days and was found wandering in the back road, hallucinating. And I do talk to his mom sometimes. She's still like, oh, that place was a cult. I can't stand her. She's so glad I'm speaking out, on behalf of people, because she's like, people need to know that Marlene Sweeney of Vermont is a Door of Hope, is not a good person and has done a lot of damage.
Wow.
Yeah.
People ask all the time, why don't the authorities step in and do stuff about Scientology? And there's various, answers to that question. In your opinion, and of course, there's religious protections that exist in the United States that are different than even what exists outside of the United States. In your opinion, are there crimes being committed in this group that the police could or should take action against, or is it all just religious belief and practice?
Yeah. If you call, horrible corporal punishment, let me find it. All right, guys, it's on the bottom of my pile. This horrible book. This has the infamous blanket training. This was our child training Bible. It's nothing but absolute disgusting abuse. And this was used by the Duggars, and it was also our child training Bible. I was happy to have, I always wanted to be a mom. I didn't really have a mom, but I loved my children so much. And my main reason I got in trouble is because I wouldn't do a lot of this shit, right? I did spank him with a wooden spoon, which I regret, but this is like utter torture. This is torture. And I think this people following this should be arrested. Absolutely arrested. It's disgusting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I did a little book report again on my channel. One of my first videos ever. And it's horrible. So that's one thing. The reason why you don't hear of literally thousands of these micro cults all over the world, and all over the US and Vermont, Oregon, where else do they like to hang out? Hawaii, everywhere. The reason you don't hear about them is because when do you hear about them? Like Mother God, she was mummified and there were crimes and there were like, it gets to the point where, yeah, that happened, but they're all hiding. They're hiding in the hills.
Wow.
And that's why the horoscope hasn't come to that yet, but I don't want it to,
Wow. Based on the story about Adam and Eve and eating the apple and all the evil basically came from that, is there any rules against eating apples?
No, I don't think so. I think it was actually a pomegranate or maybe a persimmon.
I'm hooked on pomegranates these days.
Yeah,
That's my new food
you
fad.
can't be so you can't be a Pentecostal. I'm sorry. Sorry about that,
Lord.
Aaron.
I eat an unhealthy amount of pomegranate.
Really? Do you eat the seed? Like, what do you do? Do you drink?
Well, that's what you eat.
Juice.
That's what you do eat.
Like you crunch the seeds? Like
Oh, yeah.
the middle? I mean, I'll have like a sprinkling, I'll like you order something in a restaurant and I'll eat a few of them, but I want to kind of like hog down like an entire pomegranate worth.
I'll eat like a pound or two. They're delicious.
Just the seeds? They are delicious, yeah.
I'll mix the seeds into yogurt, put some pistachios in there.
There's fiber, yeah, because the juice, in that little, what's that bottle? Palm Wonderful or whatever.
Palm.
Yeah, Palm. That's it kind of, there's no fiber, so it kind of goes to sugar in your.
That's right. It's
system.
basically soda.
Yeah.
One of the things I've never understood about all the different branches of Christianity is, and it's funny because in Scientology, there's only one Scientology.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I've just never understood how I'm like, so you guys all have the same book and all hundreds of you different groups think you're the one doing it right and everyone else is doing it wrong. And I just go, what is the statistical likelihood that your one true interpretation and practice is the one that's going to get you where you want to go and everyone else is making a mistake? And I've never really been able to wrap my head around that. But my question for you, setting up the question for you is, what was the story in your group for why your leader had the one correct interpretation of the way you were supposed to live and the practices you were supposed to follow? And did you think everyone else was going to hell?
Well, she called everyone else what she called carnal Christians, which means like of the flesh. They're not really doing it right. They're not the spirit. They might end up in heaven. They might end up in headless slum heaven, like I felt like I was going to. But I think that it was so slow, but so powerful, and we all like you weren't supposed to go to any other church. Yeah, it was. Towards the end of us leaving, we started to question in our minds, right? Especially after she did that to our children, because we were like, what loving God would do that to a child, So we started to think about it, but we still had the indoctrination. Like it was the abuses that made us leave, not really necessarily the beliefs. But we did join other churches, and some of those, the church that we joined ended up being kind of hypocritical, and we were like, we just kind of was like, we're not doing that. But I think that it was that appeal of let's get serious with God. Like it appeals to your wanting to make a difference in the world. And then we realized we weren't doing anything. We weren't even talking to anybody in the world. How are you saving God's child? How are you saving mankind, as Scientology would say? We weren't doing anything. I was just washing toilets with my bare hands. That was not saving anything, right? But we were very idealistic. And another thing, that a reason I like to speak out about this is because there's levels of it too, and there's also certain ages and certain people that do kind of buy into this. I was 20. I was kind of between. I didn't have a career or a family really or anything going on, and I really wasn't. It wasn't like under my parents. Like things like colleges. Colleges are ripe, you know, what do you talk? Recruiting grounds. So
Really?
yeah, totally. Yeah, that's one of
Just
the
because it's
ages.
young people, or is there another
Well,
reason?
yeah, there's another reason because you're out from you know, your parents' supervision or
Ah,
whatever. You're an adult, but you haven't really like I mean, I was very idealistic and very a little rebellious, you know, and that's like, oh, this sounds interesting. I think that's why a lot of the parents of the second gens probably got into Scientology in the 70s and 80s because it was like, oh, this is something that makes sense, right? And then they start, and then all of a sudden they're hearing about Xenu and stuff. They're what, $400,000 in so many years. You get that equity rescue or whatever they call it, where we can't leave now. You know, this is our whole life. So you get the cognitive dissonance. I guess the short answer to your question would be, you get to where can you can believe two things at once, and you just rationalize it, you know, and
right,
ignore it.
right.
Yeah.
Tell me again the name of the Door of Hope cult leader.
Marlene Sweeney. I like to say her name.
Marlene
Yes.
Sweeney.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so you said before that you guys believe that Marlene had a direct connection to God, like she could talk to God.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. She yeah, she would talk through scriptures or she would go up on the mountain like Moses. Like she liked to reenact the Old Testament. And she would go up to this mountain. Well, it was actually a nice resort that we paid for, but it was in the mountains. But she would hear from God and she would come back and tell us what God said. And it was usually that we were really bad and we weren't measuring up. We were weighed in the balance. See, we didn't have like we had the Bible, right? But you can interpret the Bible however you want. We didn't have advices and doctrine and all of those policy. We didn't have that. It was whatever Marlene felt like. It was kind of like I don't know if you've ever watched any of the David Koresh Waco documentaries.
I have, yeah.
He would just decide, you know, one day everybody was just going to eat popcorn for dinner a week. I like popcorn. But anyways, yeah, so I wouldn't want to join that, but I do like popcorn. But he would just decide that he was taking his he was just going to take everybody's wives and have children with them. And it's like, okay, you know, there wasn't any book that said that. So that's what Marlene believed too. She would just pretty much do that.
Wow. And did you guys think that she was the only one in the world who could talk to God, or just the only one of your group who could talk to God?
She had what I call minions. She had people that okay, I'll just give you an example. Um, she would discern that Marilyn, she always liked to pick on me. I don't know why. I was going before the board, going for a comment all the time. And she would discern that I had something that God gave her a word, but she wasn't really sure. But she had to have everybody lay hands on me. So she put me in a room, and all the elders, there's usually 5 or 6 of them, would stand around me. And I guess this was like, I don't know, probably not a touch assist, but sometimes they would lay on hands out to heal you physically or whatever. They'd put some, what is that called? Well, she was too cheap to buy real oil. It was more like Wesson. She would anoint your forehead. Your hair would be so greasy. Oh, I hated that.
Had she ever heard of Costco? Because there's some great deals.
Yeah, really. How much is the Wesson oil at Costco? Oh, real olive oil? Yeah. Wouldn't that be more Bible-y? Like Bible-ish is olive oil. So I had Wesson oil on me, and then she would lay hands on me, and she would just start going under her breath, like speaking in tongues. Because God would speak to her through that too. She'd be like, they would be ticking like aliens around me. They'd be like tick, 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 like that. And sometimes they would go, be healed, like this crazy shit. Yeah. And I'm just shaking, right? And then all of a sudden she'd become quiet and she'd come in front of me and I'd see her. I'm like, I can't help but open my eyes. She would open one eye and she'd say, and I don't want to mention any other person because they were victims too, but she would say, we'll call her Sally. She would say to one of the elders, this lady was like 75 years old and she was retired and she gave all her money to, you know, her husband had died and had a pension, gave all her money to Marlene Sweeney. And she would be sitting there and she'd say, Sally, God told me that you have a word for Marilyn. And she would just be like, and I kind of look over and she's trying to come up with a word, right? And you could see the smoke coming out of her ears. Like she has to have a word for Marilyn. And so she's like, I'm getting a word. I'm getting a word. I think it's God told me Achan. So Achan, supposedly had a spirit of Achan. Achan was this guy in the Bible that stole a bunch of idols and kept them under his tent. And the Israelites were losing the battles in the Old Testament. And so God condemned him. He ended up being thrown with all of his wives, his children, or however many wives he had, his children, all his belongings, into this valley, and they were stoned, and not in the fun way, stoned to death. And they were burned up. And so, yeah, so I have that spirit in me. And again, it's like your family getting burned up. Thanks, Marlene. Thanks. It's just, she didn't give a shit. She didn't give a shit. She just wanted to hurt me, and that's okay. I let her hurt me until she started hurting my children. It's like, I realize I can take a lot of abuse, but don't hurt people I love. Don't hurt people I love, and don't hurt any SBTV creators I love. I'm not yelling at you. I'm just saying.
Wow. I mean, to me, someone who's never involved in that, it's always easier to feel that something you weren't involved in is.
Yeah, and this isn't typical. This isn't your everyday average Pentecostal church, but this was a sect. There's lots of sects, and not the fun kind either.
Well, I'll tell you, I see some of the stuff that some of these televangelists do, and I'm like,
yeah, that's true. But Marlene believed in asceticism. Well, it's usually extremes, right? Extremes are bad. She believed in celibacy, so we did get married, but like I said, good thing we knew where things went. But it was you're pure before God, you're celibate. Yeah, it was no masturbation, no nothing like that. You couldn't even look at a person. It was just yeah. So it's usually one extreme to the other, and usually the cult leader gets to do whatever they want anyways, right? That's how it goes.
Right. Was she well, it's easier to imagine a male leader taking advantage of the members physically. Did she do any of that?
No, no, not that I know of at all. It was more so this whole authoritarianism thing that she believed with, Bill Gothard. She said the reason why, because leadership's supposed to be male in the Bible, according, if you take it word by word. A lot of Christians don't believe that, and that's great. And I know a lot of great Christians, but in this sect, this cult, it was the reason why she could get away with this as a woman is because there's a few women in the Bible, like Deborah, who was a judge, few women in the Bible that were anointed by God, that were used by God. A lot of words like being used, which I don't like to be used, guys, but that's what she always said. It was a good thing. So she was being used by God because there were no other men in like 100-mile radius that God had anointed to do what she was led to be doing, right? And leading this flock. So she'd be like, I'm doing this for you. Oh, you rotten. Kind of sounds like Dave Miscavige, just like, you guys are just, doing the wrong thing all the time. And I can't believe. And she used to be a sweet lady when I first met her. And then she's just a screaming banshee all the time. We could never make her happy, ever. Yeah.
Wow. To me, again, because I was never involved in it, it's easy for me to hear how you're describing this, and I just go, that is just group delusion of the leader throwing it over to someone else, and someone else has to come up with something, and they're convincing themselves it's coming from God. And I immediately equated actually to what I believe in Scientology is a group delusion that is enforced on all the members about the effectiveness of these OT levels, where you're telepathically counseling these spirits that you're told are stuck to you,
right?
And then convincing yourself that you feel great as a result of doing it. And You know,
Yeah, you
Marilyn,
know
what's
why you
crazy is
feel
that
great? You know why you feel great is because you admit, okay, I have a spirit of Achan. I'm sorry, I have idols in my tent. And then when you leave, when they let you out of that fucking room, you feel great because you're out of there. Like
yeah,
you confess. If you confess your sins, Jesus is faithful and just to forgive your cleanse you from all righteousness. You feel cleansed. So if you're sitting in a room, casting out body thetans, and yeah, you feel like, what is that called? Kelly told me her parents used to say after they got out of auditing, they would
keyed
have
out,
this.
released.
Yes, that's it. Keyed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of auditing sessions where I felt very keyed out afterwards. But I never did DOT levels. None of my auditing sessions were about getting rid of body thetans. I'd never even heard of body thetans until after I'd left Scientology. And
Wow.
I feel where the group delusion actually comes in, and this is super interesting to think about, is because it applied to me as a little Scientologist growing up and a little staff member, where every single week at flag graduation, you'd have people who you knew were intelligent, successful people who could,
Mhm.
you'd never think that these people are someone who could fall for some BS. And they're getting up there on stage and they're like, this week I finished OT5. And oh my God, you have to get to this level as fast as you can, no matter what you have to do. I had more gain in every single session of OT5 than the entire rest of my bridge combined. And the delusion is, to the people who are listening to these success stories, you have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. You can't even conceive what they're talking about because it's confidential. Nobody knows what's on these levels
Right.
until you're on the levels.
Interesting.
And just imagine decades or a lifetime of being told that this stuff is so great, this stuff is so great, this stuff is so great. And when you finally get on it, how much pressure you have, like mentally, spiritually, psychically, for it to also be that great for you. Because I don't think there's a Scientologist on earth who, at the lower levels, who, if you told them, hey, by the way, these upper levels, oh boy, let me tell you, you've got thetans stuck to you. And their reactive minds and their painful experiences, it's them that's messing you up. And if you go telepathically audit them, you're going to feel so much better. I don't think there's a Scientologist on earth who would hear that story and go, oh, I want some of that.
Right. And that's why it's confidential. And that's why we didn't tell the parishioners what was going on, that, that Marlene was just screaming at us constantly. And we were, we had to put smiles on our faces and be shiny, happy people. Right. Because and we weren't even allowed to talk to each other. We weren't even allowed to think. And back to the navel gazing thing. If they can get you doing busy work, being worn down, no sleep, no food, all this, and constantly looking within yourself and picking body thetans and demons and lice off you, they got you. So you're not going to run to somebody and say, hey guys, don't come here, because you think that you're going to go to hell or you're going to be lost. I don't know if there's an equivalent of hell in Scientology.
So there isn't. Well, L. Ron Hubbard says, and actually, let's compare this because let's compare this. This is going to be fun, at least for me. I hope it's fun for you.
Yeah. No, I love this shit.
The fear that they instilled in you as a young person had to do with everything that would happen to you when you die, whether, burning in hell, being beheaded, going to heaven, all this kind of stuff.
Well, the dung heap is here. The dung heap is here too.
Oh, the dung heap was here.
My kids were going to end up prostitutes and drug addicts and all that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Is the dung heap, by the way, in Vermont?
Yeah, I think it's right here. I was gonna do some poop emojis. I've been working on some theta potatoes, but I probably could make some poop emojis.
I have a theta potato over here.
You
somewhere.
do?
One of these days, I'm going to create a shelf here of all my little goodies.
Can you fit this on it? I don't know. I mean, he's kind of cuddly though. You could just use him as a pillow.
Rodney is really something special there.
Yes, this one's going to Laura, but I'll make more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scientology is almost
this is serious business. Yes.
No, Scientology is almost the opposite of that. He says, L. Ron Hubbard says, Earth is the hell. We're in it now.
Okay, right.
Your day-to-day life is hell, because this is the matrix. You're trapped in your body and you can't get out. Like, could you leave your body right now if you wanted to and go do some remote viewing and come back in? No, but you should be able to. And you're stuck in this body because our evil alien psychiatrist captors have deemed that you as a being were creating too much trouble over in the Galactic Federation, that you had to be sent to Earth, which is basically just a prison planet, but that being imprisoned here on Earth in these physical bodies to live lifetime after lifetime with amnesia every new lifetime of your previous life, that is the hell. Now, compared to the hell of burning for eternity, Earth is not that bad.
No.
Ignorance might be bliss, as they say in the Matrix.
Yeah, I mean, in my cult, in some Christian circles, it's just believed that this is a fallen nature, that God made the earth perfect, but because Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which I never understood why that was a bad thing, because don't you want to know the difference between good and evil? But that was bad. They could eat from every other tree, mind you, but they couldn't eat from that tree. When they did, they realized they were naked, and then all of a sudden God cursed them. Men had to work to toil, hard labor for the rest of their life, and that was the curse of men. The women that's why we have painful childbirth, was because Adam, that they ate. Yeah.
So interestingly enough, for Adam and Eve, ignorance would have been bliss. They weren't supposed to find out the truth.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
so
they
one of the
sinned.
ways
That
that
was a sin.
Scientology convinces people that it is worth your time to spend your entire life working for Scientology and getting people up the bridge is they go, after this lifetime, you don't have the privilege of either going to a heaven or a hell and escaping the reality that you exist in. When you die, you're just going to wake up tomorrow in a new baby body. In other words, you are going to inherit the earth in the condition that you left it. And they'll basically go, are you satisfied or happy with the condition of Earth as it is? Everyone will pretty much say in Scientology, no. They'll go, well, are you doing anything to improve it? And they'll, convince you that you're not. And they'll go, do you see how silly that is when you're just going to come back? You're going to keep coming back to this Earth. So you might as well do everything you can to make it a better Earth. And the only way that you can do that is by getting people into Scientology.
But if this is hell and this is a prison planet, and you're just going to wake up in another body, like, what's fun about that?
Well, no, they want to get you to a point spiritually where that's interesting, right? Because he never says do the bridge so that you can gain the ability to not come back to Earth. Interestingly enough, he says that's never the pitch. He actually says, do you really want the conscience of all of your fellow mankind? Do you want them being trapped here for eternity on your conscience? Yeah. Scientologists want to do enough Scientology so that when they come back next lifetime, they can still remember all the Scientology they did in their previous lifetime and pick up right where they left off, helping other people get into Scientology and get up the bridge. It really is their goal to simply get everyone in the world into Scientology. There's no hellfire and damnation afterlife story.
Right.
It's Earth.
Is there a heaven? Is there, what's Target 2? What's all that? What's
Target 2 is just the next, Target 2 is just the next planet to get Scientology started on.
Oh, so it never ends.
It never ends. Once you get everyone on Earth into Scientology, you need to get everyone in the Galactic Federation into Scientology.
What's fun about that? There's no
It's not fun at all. It sucks. That's why being a Scientology staff member just sucks. Like the work never stops, and there's never a win. There's never a success at the end of it's just more hours worked, more hours worked, more hours worked, more money raised. There's no ultimate goal.
There's no like nirvana. There's no like, you're done. You learned all the lessons.
That's right. Even when you hear Scientologists talking about clearing the planet, I guess it didn't occur to him that maybe some people thought that once you cleared the planet, there was some afterlife. No,
you just go to another planet.
Yeah. It really sucks.
Well, I mean, I'm tired from this life. Like, I just want to go retire somewhere. This is just bullshit. You know?
I mean, at least in these other religions, there's some pot of gold at the end of that rainbow.
Yeah. So you come back and you get 21 years, and then you just we come back.
That's right.
For a billion years. What after a billion? What if? Yeah.
And that's why I've always said, if Scientologists like to, they pat themselves on the back. They think they're so freaking smart that they're the ones who know everything and they're logical and there's no faith, there's no belief. It's just facts and data and information and technology. And I go to Scientologists who are in the bubble and I go, guys, L. Ron Hubbard could have done one thing, the easiest thing that he could have done and come back, and everyone in the world would join Scientology. If L. Ron Hubbard had just come back, like he's saying all of us are supposed to be able to do. He could have come back.
People said he has.
No, there's no Scientologist that believes L. Ron Hubbard has come back.
Okay. Jesus hasn't.
And
come
he
back
was
either.
And there's the Sea Org members who worked at the international base at that time were told that L. Ron Hubbard was going to come back somewhere around 18 to 21 years later. Miscavige was actually, by all reports, quite paranoid that he had not accomplished some of the things Hubbard told him to.
So he believed. He believed.
Yes, that's why when people say, does David Miscavige really believe in Scientology? I go, there's plenty of evidence that indicates he does believe. I just think he believes in a different way. He doesn't believe all the bullshit about L. Ron Hubbard. He knows L. Ron Hubbard was a fuck up. I think David Miscavige thinks that he's had to shoulder the burden of fixing a lot of L. Ron Hubbard's mistakes. Yeah. And so he doesn't revere L. Ron Hubbard, but in my opinion, but he did, by all reports, believe L. Ron Hubbard was probably coming back.
So he believes in the tech.
He believes in the tech. He believes in Thetans. I mean, that's my opinion. And so I go to all the Scientologists. I'm like, look at the sorry state of Scientology and its horrible reputation in PR. If I was a Scientologist and I believed that L. Ron Hubbard could and should and would be able to come back, I'd have to ask myself, then why didn't he? Because it's the one thing that would prove Scientology is legitimate. And it would have been so, if you believe L. Ron Hubbard was full OT and had the ability to be fully stably exterior at will with full perceptions, and we're supposed to be able to skip the implant station and reincarnate with full recall of our past lives, then why didn't L. Ron Hubbard do that? He could have gone on Good Morning America, come back with his new body and give full total recall of all of his previous lives. People would be lining up outside churches of Scientology to get up that bridge and get the tech of Scientology.
Got a lot of theories about that. Like, okay, he decided to drop his body, right? So maybe he just doesn't feel like coming back. Like he's got other shit to do. And you know, if you guys are waiting for him, he's not going to do what you tell. Like in Christianity, it's more like faith, right? Like God's not going to, you know, if I say, you know, if you're real, you know, heal this person of whatever. If you like test him, he's not going to do it. He'll do it when you least expect it.
Yeah, of course.
So L. Ron's going to come back when you least expect it. So wait, you got to be a prepper. Be a prepper.
But Marilyn, there is a story for why L. Ron Hubbard hasn't come back. And I'm like, of course, that's the story. And the story is he went off to Target 2 to get Scientology started on another planet in another solar system and left us the job of clearing Earth. And that's why we have to do it for LRH, so that once Earth is clear, instead of reincarnating on Earth, we can go join him on Target 2 and help him clear Target 2. And I'm thought to myself,
bummer.
Wouldn't it have been easier if he actually came back and helped us clear Earth first, and then we all went off to Target 2 together? Now, this is why I say Scientologists pat themselves on the back for thinking they're so smart. And you're like, no, the smart thing would have been for L. Ron Hubbard to come back. Don't pretend like that wouldn't have been the best thing for him to do. Can we just confront the fact that the reason he didn't is because this is all a lie? This is a scam, folks.
No, you can't think of that, because then it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars and years and giving up your children. Like Leah always said, it's just so true, you know?
It's what?
It's so true that it's a lie, right? It's just, true. Yeah. The reason why people don't say the hell with this, because where do you go? You know?
Yeah.
Out into the W world, you know?
Yeah.
Where people are terrible and they're all going to.
I'm seeing some really funny comments in the chat.
I gotta say, I'm seeing so many familiar names. Hi, everybody. So good to see you. I was scared to death to even look at the chat. I was like, but I love all.
Well, here, let's look at some of the comments.
Yeah, totally.
And actually, the way we have this shared right now, are you able to star comments or no?
I don't know.
I don't think you might not be.
No, I'm trying to click on Purple Groovy. Said LRH is a planet slumlord. I agree, Purple Groovy. And hi, Purple Groovy. Hi, everybody. Rev Girl. Do you know her?
I don't know.
She's an ex-Scientologist. She's super cool.
Oh, okay. I
Interviewed
see
her.
her. I see her in the chat.
Yeah, she always sends wine and chocolates,
That's
emojis.
awesome. Okay, so Dave Owens says Rod is taller than David Miscavige.
You know what? Yeah, he totally is. Where did my little Davy guy go? I don't know. He's somewhere. He fell, but yeah, he definitely is. Definitely is.
Oh boy.
I
Okay.
hope you don't get.
Brad.
You're not gonna get like demonetized for that, right? It's just a golden rod with some feet.
Oh no, I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it's already demonetized. That's okay.
Oops.
There is Brad Cotter. There is a fanatical Catholic group, TFP, in my town. Interesting.
There's one in my town.
Well, that
too.
reminds me of the question I asked you. Was there a particular thing that you guys were told and believed as to why she had the unique ability or uniquely knew the right way? I mean, I know I asked it. I just don't know what was the
Okay.
answer.
Because it's not that nobody else had the truth. She did have some other cults, some other communes that she had said that they had the truth too, but then she always had falling outs with them because she couldn't share power and she couldn't take any advice, right? So even she was ordained. I don't even know to this day if my marriage is legal, but it's 26 years later, so I assume it is, but she just got like sort of ordained from some other cult. But yeah, I think it was, she had these revelations, and I don't even know the answer to that, except that she did take some of the writings, early on. If anybody knows like who Charles Spurgeon, some of the old like Martin Luther, you probably heard of Lutheranism, right? That was the big break off from the Catholic Church in the 1500s. It was Martin Luther. He basically started the whole Protestant sect or religion, and from that branched off Methodists, Lutherans, Baptists, all of them, all the ists and the Oscals, all of them, like
Amazing.
Episcopalians, Episcopals, and Pentecostals, and yeah.
Wow. Dave Owens says, "What Would Jesus Do?" came from a book called His Steps from 1896.
I didn't know that.
This is the other thing where Scientologists pat themselves on the back for being so logic-based and analytical and just it's all facts. And you go, except they have except right in front of their face is this thing that L. Ron Hubbard said that in any situation, what you should ask yourself is, what would Ron do? You go, and you convince yourself that we don't worship this guy. Like, it's literally what the Christians say about Jesus. We're saying it about Ron, but we don't worship him. Jesus, only lowly faith-based religions worship people.
That big stage, it reminded me of an evangelical Christian, one of those televangelist mega churches, right? And you got Tom Cruise with the big, metal Flava Flav, gold plate on him, and then he's like, "Sir," and he's got a big picture of Elron. That's I mean, that's worship. That's worship.
Abigail S. says, God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They took an apple from that tree and ate it. So apples aren't the significance, but eating from the forbidden tree is.
Yes. Yeah, could have been a pomegranate. Sorry to tell you. Could have been a persimmon. Never had a persimmon, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever had a persimmon either. Okay, Lori Plays says, Marilyn, thanks for sharing your story with Aaron's Peeps. You are an awesome human being.
Love you, Lori. Thank you. She's great.
Barbara Mangano.
Oh, God.
Marilyn, so glad you got out and are telling your story. This
Love
is
you, Barbara.
Oh, it's Natalie.
Hi. Oh my God. Talk about a amazing story. I was just like, my jaw was on the floor listening to 4 hours of your story, Natalie. You're amazing. And it's so good.
Natalie,
how are you guys so well spoken? I'm just up here like, whoa, oh my God, I can't even talk. But you guys,
Natalie and I
awesome.
are doing another video later this evening.
All right, awesome.
So she goes, yeah, so true, Aaron. We got so good at giving a good success story or risk having to redo things. Okay, that's another component of the mass delusion, the group delusion. it's enforced on you. You're not allowed to do your next step until we're satisfied with how much you've said this step helped
Yep.
you.
Yeah.
And
Again, we had
Scientologists don't
nothing
want to just
written.
lie about it.
Yeah.
They don't want to
Right.
just lie about it. They want it to actually have helped them.
Do you think you make it like make it
Yes.
go right? You make it happen like in your mind?
Yes.
Convince yourself,
Yes.
right? All part of
Yes.
indoctrination. Yeah. Absolutely.
Barbara
Wait,
Mangano. You both lived through similar things, yet in different cults. Yeah.
wild, huh?
Did
Can I
you
ask you
read?
something real quick? Oh, go ahead. I know we have we should do another stream.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Did you feel like, you know, when you left, right? Did you have some guilt? I don't know how to call it, what to call it, but I think I've heard it's called moral injury, like where you were kind of made all the shit that inflicted on you, where for the cause you had to inflict that abuse on others to a degree.
Say it again.
I mean, okay, so like, okay, so you were sucked, right? And you were treated bad. Were you used as a vehicle to treat others badly? Like, I mean, I know you weren't in charge, like you didn't put anybody in the RPF and you didn't do any of that. You didn't cover up crimes or whatever. But me, I didn't do any of that either. I didn't do crimes. But all the shit that happened to me, I would have to like kind of I don't know, like inflicted on others, like, oh, fasting's great. Yeah. Or, oh yeah, you got to take this bucket of ammonia and you need to, for Jesus, you need to wipe 500 spice stars with straight ammonia as it's going up your nose. Right.
Wow.
Or you have to, you know, pray, fast and pray on your face, prostrate on your face. Right. Those were all horrible things. Oh, you have a demon of this. You know, so I don't know. So I did feel a lot of guilt about it because
Mm.
I honestly feel like it's not the flash again, but I honestly feel like crocheting kind of saved my sanity because I was able to have something tangible to and I do it on my stream sometimes. I'll crochet just to like focus on where I didn't get out of my body because people were literally going insane and being hospitalized. And for some
Right.
reason, my husband and I, Duncan, he would go like jump in a lake or something was acceptable. Like we didn't have any acceptable outlets except for a couple of things.
Right.
Swimming,
You know,
walking, and crocheting.
when you hear about here, Anon is making a comment here about like enforcing conditions and shaming people. So
point.
when you hear about the things, the parts of people's Scientology experience that were the most abusive to them, and I can't generalize for all stories, but it mostly has to do with things that happened with either like if it was physical abuse or sexual
Right.
abuse, or
Right.
if it was things that the ethics officer was enforcing, or also hardships due to the crazy fundraising. I was, in a sense, very, very lucky that my job in Scientology was only ever related to delivering courses to people who someone else had already gotten them to pay for, and
Right.
somebody else had already convinced them to come in and do it. And then it was
Yeah.
my job to either help them get through that course or to supervise the people who were helping them get through that course. Now, I know
Right.
Louis Repetto is in the chat, and he's one of the people who worked, who was a course supervisor at ASHA when I was the tech sec there. And so the things, like as far as the bad behavior that was expected of me on my post was really limited to like, I don't know, screaming at people. Louis Repetto will get a kick out of me, particularly remembering how much I screamed at Anna Dementov. She was a horrible Sea Org member, Louis. Let's be honest.
Well, screw her then. You can yell at her.
But the truth is, and I wonder how many people who worked under me in the Sea Org would agree with this, is that one of the reasons I succeeded on my particular post the way that I did is I was actually particularly good at getting people to rally for the cause. And the
Yeah.
most effective way to get people to rally for the cause is not with threats of punishment and shame and humiliation. Like it's not a very effective motivator.
Mhm.
And I never, despite some stories you'll hear of me getting into some physical confrontations with like a Sea Org security guard or whatever. I'm not someone who ever controlled people in the Sea Org through physical violence. Like I never hit anybody in the Sea Org. I screamed at Bill Screevers a lot. I screamed at Jim Plett a lot. I screamed at Dave Horadell a lot.
Oh, screw him.
And the other thing about like course rooms, you're not allowed to yell in course rooms. And I wonder if Louis Repetto, if you're in the chat.
I see him leaving Scientology.
Okay. Anna Dementov, do you remember our yelling match in the hallway about me demanding to go to the RPF? I don't actually remember that.
Wanted to go?
Wow. I don't. I now that you mention that, I get a vague impression of something. Oh yeah, because letting us because Lewis was a course supervisor on the briefing course, which was a major auditor course. And it's funny because in some ways these supervisors had such a controlled and restricted life and job. And they weren't given a lot of freedoms, and yet they were kind of the lifeblood of what we delivered as an organization. Like losing a supervisor was almost unthinkable. And yet you'd think that if we wanted to hold on to these course supervisors, we would treat them really, really, really well. Yeah, and yet they weren't treated well. It's just this weird way the organization behaves. And so, Louis, I'm curious, if you want to say in the chat, like, what's the worst thing you remember me doing? Because honestly, it's just screaming at people who weren't complying. And I'm not even brushing, like,
let's do a tell-all Louis Repetto of.
And so, you know, screaming at people isn't good. But when you hear people talking about their horrible Scientology stories, it's usually not just someone yelled at me. And yet it became very clear to me that that's how John Lundeen, our captain, dealt with his juniors. That's how my senior, Andrea Lewis Butterworth would deal with me sometimes. And it very quickly became clear that the way to not be in trouble with your seniors is to treat your juniors the way your seniors treat people. And that way they will see you as being in the in group instead of the out group. And it is true that let me see. Lewis said, I can attest Aaron was a shouter.
Really?
His 50-foot TR1 is impeccable. Yelling back at John Lundeen in the exec office was the worst I've seen of you. Yes.
Is that what you do to ashtrays? What's TR1?
So TR1 is when you're, so there's different versions of it. So yelling at the ashtray is actually TR8. TR1 is so just reading. TR1 is reading lines out of Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, wow.
But 50-foot TR1 is when you stand 50 feet, 50 feet away from each other and read lines out of Alice in Wonderland. And you're supposed to be able to speak naturally and be heard.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, Lewis, I'm not sure I've ever heard someone mention 50-foot
Alice in Wonderland. Before. That's just gibberish.
That's actually why he picked that book.
Yes. Yeah. The whole, Doug Kramer, bless him. Rest in peace, Doug. He was talking about the clay tables, the claymation, and the thing with Alice in Wonderland. Like, what do they call it? Like infantilize, like having you be like a child. It's actually a scripture verse. Like, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless you become like a child. That's another tactic. That's another thing that was in my cult and also in Scientology, is just having you accept these crazy behaviors, this crazy language, this crazy stuff. But, training routines are fairly at the beginning, right? So when you end up in OT3 or whatever, learning about Xenu, you're already playing with clay. You're already yelling, screaming, Alice in Wonderland, I mean, that's the shit we were doing too. Like, not that.
The thing about the TRs is that they repeat at pretty much every level of Scientology. You can do them as the first thing when you walk in the door. Then you do them when you're doing your professional auditor training. And then once you are a professional auditor, if it's your job to audit people, you do TRs every single day of your life. Most Scientologists, most professional auditors have Alice in Wonderland memorized. It's hard to flip through the book and pick a line that you're not sick of saying already.
Twas Brillig. Yeah, I don't know much of it. I can quote scripture though. I can tell you where rainbows came from, and it has nothing to do with refracted light or anything. It has to do with a stinky old ark that could not have fit all those things in there. Yes, a boat and all that. And that's where God, because he sent the rainbow, promised that he would not destroy the earth with flood ever again, but fire is still on the table. Just saying.
Fire is still on the table.
Fire is on the table.
Jilbo Baggins says, you know who needs a crochet poo?
Oh my goodness, Jobo. Yes. I love you, honey. All right. Yes. I won't blow up your spot, but I know what you're saying.
Natalie says, that's what I should have said when I left the Sea Org. I'm going ahead to work on Target 2.
Why not? There you go.
You know, some people have asked me if I ever thought Scientology could end in a Jim Jones People's Temple mass death scenario.
Yeah.
And based on Scientology's lack of belief in some greater afterlife, I've always said no. But I said there's one exception. And I don't think this would ever happen, but I just feel like the exception would be if for some reason Miscavige published some edict that he'd heard from L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's the other thing. Scientologists believe they can all, once they're OT, telepathically communicate with other beings. How come David Miscavige can't telepathically communicate with L. Ron Hubbard? He's never claimed to. Okay. So if Miscavige said, I heard from L. Ron, and he said, the Psychs have won Earth. It's a lost cause. We all need to go join him on Target 2.
Right.
If he said that, there is a large chunk of Scientologists who would drop the body to go join Ron on Target 2.
I believe that, because the thing is, these are just meat bodies. With us, it was you're just a vessel. You're just an empty vessel, right? In Heaven's Gate, you're a vehicle. Heaven's Gate, you look at the beliefs, not too far off from our crazy shit, honestly.
Wow.
But the only reason why we know about it, 32 people, is because that's how they end it, right? And you guys have Tom Cruise. Door of Hope just has me with, just crochet and shit. I don't know. But yeah, Marlene Sweeney. I just want you guys to know that name.
Marlene Sweeney.
Thank you.
Blow Drill. This is Dylan Gill in the chat. If you want a map of Target 2, hit that like button.
All right.
Excellent advice. Nancy Stitchin. Keep fighting the good fight, you two.
Thank you, Nancy.
Oh, Jem's Journey was also accused of having a Jezebel spirit.
You don't look. See, look, she looks so sweet. Yeah. Bullshit.
Yeah. It's crazy. Because in Scientology, the whole body thetan thing is confidential. You can't run around accusing people of having bad body thetans. But it's interesting. It's interesting though. Like, look, as someone who grew up in Scientology, I never even conceived that there was a possibility that another thetan could be the source of your problems. That's not even something that truly makes sense in Scientology. And it's almost like you get to that level, and L. Ron Hubbard is now introducing this thing that a lot of Scientologists, by report, when they first read this, they're like, are you effing kidding me right now? And yet this group delusion thing comes in and is like, sometimes I've heard the course supervisor on OT3 even tells people, you don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe it.
Right. Yeah.
You just have to audit the procedure.
We always just called it faith. Yeah.
Just audit the procedure.
Yeah. But can I ask you something though? Haven't you already been told that your mind has like two different, like with us, it was the sin nature because of Adam and Eve and all that. We had what was called an old man that would be like trying to get you to not be walking in the Spirit. So you had the Holy Spirit that would speak in your mind, and your new person that when you come up from the water of baptism, that's what you're supposed to be walking in the Spirit. Then you've got basically dividing yourself. We had the sin nature, or they called the old man, which was like the reactive mind. It was something like the devil on your shoulder telling you what to do, right? Which wasn't good, because you're not walking in the Spirit. You're not walking in the new person that you're meant to be, right? So you're just going insane, because it's like, is this my old man? Is this my reactive mind? Is this, blah, blah, blah. So you're already like, kind of, if they can get you, like, again, navel gazing, looking within and saying, oh, I've got all this, it can set up a conflict. It's like, hey, I got an answer. I didn't even know I had a problem. I didn't even know I was born, this or that, or with, body thetans or whatever. They inflict the injury on you. They tell you what's wrong with you. And guess what? They've got the solution,
Right.
That's right. Every call I know of does that.
So L. Ron Hubbard's version of that is telling you that what's wrong with you is your reactive mind. And only through Dianetics auditing can you get rid of the reactive mind.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons that appeals to a certain amount of people at a certain level is because you're being told that what's wrong with you is something that's actually not your fault. You're not responsible for the fact that you're not to blame for the fact that you have a reactive mind.
Yep.
And we're giving you a
blame
solution.
Adam and Eve. I blamed Adam and Eve, Yeah.
Now, what's crazy is that it turns out that at the end of your Dianetics auditing, you're actually supposed to realize that you are actually the one who created your own reactive mind. So the realization that they call the clear cognition is you go, I just realized I've been mocking up. Mocking up is a Scientology word that just means creating mentally. I just realized I've been mocking up my own reactive mind all along, and I'm not doing it anymore. Boom, you're clear. Your reactive mind is gone. And
now, wait, is this when you're clear? Is this when you go clear, or is this an OT8 or whatever? Like what level is this?
That's going clear.
Okay, that's going clear. Gotcha. Oh.
And so then from a Scientology perspective, you're supposed to believe that, hey, the one thing that was making me less than a perfect being or a perfect computer is erased. I'm perfect now. And then you'll go,
were you tricked? Were you tricked?
Who?
I know. Were you tricked? Like your reactive mind was there or what wasn't? I don't.
That's the thing. It's like you didn't know you had a reactive mind until L. Ron Hubbard said you did. No,
right.
and then you really did have one, but you only had one because you were creating it constantly.
Oh, interesting.
He said,
wow.
You're supposed to realize, oh, I was the one continuously creating this thing. If I just stop creating it, it will go away. And you go, yeah, but you didn't even know you were creating it until L. Ron Hubbard told you that you had one. Anyway, it's this weird thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense because it isn't real, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what the conclusion I've come to. I don't know. Like, people ask me, are you spiritual? Do you believe in anything? Honestly, I threw, I threw the baby out with the bathwater, and then, I might take something back. Like, okay, the Bible says God is love. All right, I can do that. But whatever. I believe in love, right? But all I know is that I don't know. That's all I know is I don't know, and that's what I know. So I can't pretend. I can't pretend to believe in anything, And I tell my kids, my son was so scared to tell me he had been sneaking on the internet, and this was he's 20, he's 21 now. He'll be 22 this week, but he was entered sort of like a SPTV type thing like 10 years ago, but it was an atheist. I can't remember the name of the guy. Somebody probably knows one of the biggest atheist channels, and he started listening to him, and he understands all the ins and outs of these communities. So he's just like, Mom, just do your own self, just ignore the trolls. Like he tells me how to navigate this now, and he knows all the emojis. But anyways, he knows all the stuff. I ask him, like, where'd you hear that, Mom? On the internet. So anyways, the atheism thing, he was so afraid to tell me that he was an atheist because he thought I was going to be like, oh, my rhinestones, but I was just like, hey, listen, honey, I don't want you to pretend to believe in God if you don't, it's just like, done with that.
That's good. So you threw baby Jesus out with the bathwater.
I kind of did. I think, and I still do have a nativity, and we put it up every year. I don't know what I believe. And maybe Jesus is real. I'm not making fun of anybody, and it's a tradition. I might crochet a baby Gertie, a little Gertie to put next to the Lord in the manger. That sounds cool,
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Brad Cotter says TFP wants to dissolve the separation of church and state. Oh, that was the organization he referred to previously. I think it was an extremist group that he mentioned earlier.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the Catholic. Yeah.
Lethenda Grauklinger. I so love that Marilyn is telling her story. Comparing different cults and the similarities is very educating. It shows red flags to many people. Yeah. By the way, I've started to give particular advice to Scientology, people who want advice on how to maybe get their Scientology friends to wake up. And I say, have them watch documentaries about other cults, because
absolutely.
A Scientologist will not be offended at being, you got to watch this NXIVM documentary. They're such a cult.
Oh my God. Yeah. Totally right.
Scientology won't be offensive about that because they don't think they are a cult. But when they start watching that, they're going to go, are we the baddies?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll go one step further, not only helping you leave a cult because you realize you're in one, but also just the deconstructing and deprogramming. It helped me because I had such a hard time. Like I really like Derek Lambert, but I can't watch his channel that much because when he has apologists and stuff on, the language was just triggering. Right. But we had our crazy language and it was taken to extreme. So it was very triggering to me. But you guys have a crazy language, not triggering to me. So, but again, the similarities were so uncanny that it really did help me to deprogram and see the tactics and everything that happened to me. So
That's awesome. Lathanda says, Aaron, remember, there was a person hiding under a desk from you. You crossed the line there and did not put your manners back in. Bad AA run. There's this hilarious story they tell on my hate website, which is if it was a real story, I'd pull up the report and share it with you guys, but it's a fake story. I mean, me chasing someone around the org and then they hide in my senior's office and hide under her desk. And it's, I feel like she's talking about Ben Francis for some reason, but I don't know. I'm just.
I was thinking of a different Ben. So there's no fax machines involved. No fax machines involved in this story.
Oh, that's Dan. Dan O'Connor is the fax machine.
Oh, Dan. Okay, different. Okay. Who's the other guy named Ben? Was that the one you?
Ben Monahan.
Like? Oh, that's right. Right. I do listen. I got to take notes.
Fancy Pants RN. Listening to Marilyn brings up much of my childhood. Thankfully, my parents left, but at nearly 50, I'm still realizing the landmines of trauma that I find.
Yeah.
Wow.
I get it. I get you. Yeah. I'll be
I think you know this gentleman.
Oh my God. Hi, honey. Finally home. Oh, you're home? I didn't hear the dogs. You went to the dentist. Thanks, honey.
Hi, Duncan.
You can bring me some more coffee if you want. Sorry.
Will Gunn, mainstream believers, a little self-reflection. I only think I know what this means. Is this comment directed at mainstream believers? Possibly. It could be.
Oh, well, anybody can believe whatever they want as long as they don't hurt people or children or indoctrinate people or shove it down your throat. That's all I can.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, yeah, let's do more chats like this.
Yeah. I have so many more questions for you. I know you were interviewing me. Well, yeah, like a lot of them. Because when you were talking, I was like, but I'll write them down. Well, you know we'll do another one.
Let's do another video where you ask me questions.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us this afternoon. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end. And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe